But hey, welcome everybody. Really excited about um, the training I'm doing tonight. And the training I'm doing tonight is on how to buy small apartment buildings. And I am uniquely qualified to talk about this subject because many of you may know, or maybe you don't know if you've never met me or heard of me before. But before I syndicated deals and before I did 11,000 units, I started with no previous real estate investing experience. And I bought my own deals with my own money until I ran out of money. So my very first investment property was a 32 unit building. And I consider anything under 50 units small apartment. So I'm going to be talking about buying anywhere between 5 and 50 units tonight, and why that might be a good strategy for some of you. And before I share my slides, I'm just going to be direct and let everybody know here that, during I would say the multifamily bull market, we had a decade of golden years from 2012 to 2022. And it was easy to raise money. It was easy to get debt. And I was teaching and encouraging everybody that I spoke to, whether it was at a free masterclass like this or in my, mastermind communities where people pay $30,000 a year to work with me and my team, I was teaching people to buy 60 units and up because there's a lot of advantages to doing that. And one of them is professional management. But I could also tell you right now, it also occurs to me that there's a great opportunity to buy small apartments again right now. And I'm going to tell you why as we, progress. But one of the reasons is right now it's a little bit harder to raise money. Okay. So what I've been teaching my students that are in my paid communities is instead of going after a $30 million deal or a $20 million deal, go after a $5 or $10 million deal. Because if you go after a $10 million deal, you still need to raise $3 million. And right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. There's the Iran war. And even though there's a lot of benefits to buying 60 units and up in a syndication model, and I still believe they are. I mean, I'm buying 229 units right now in a syndication model. Okay. But when you're starting, it could be, a little daunting and it could be a little overwhelming. And so I want to bring back the days where how I started. And just because I started with small apartments, it doesn't mean that you have to start with small apartments. But for some of you, it could be a good way to go. So I'm going to finish at the top of the hour or earlier, and I'm going to cover the following agenda. So let me pull up my slides here. And it's great to be on with everybody. While I'm pulling up my slides, I would love for you all to share with me in the chat box. Go ahead and share with me in the chat box where you're coming in from tonight. So I see Tyrone is stuck in traffic and he's joining over the phone. So I see Karen from Dallas, Michael from Sacramento. Who else wants to drop it into the chat? Laguna Hills, Dana. How you doing, Dana? Vincent from Long Island. Jacob from Lawton. I see Sharon from Richardson, Texas. Tyrone from Atlanta. Janika from Houston. Jonathan from LA. Let's see, Dave from Plano, Texas. Antonio from Puerto Rico. I was just in Puerto Rico for the last 4 days. And so maybe Antonio is maybe you're one of the guys I met here in Puerto Rico. So it's glad to see you, and lots of other people on tonight. So this is what I'm going to talk about is buying your own apartment deal. Okay. And so you can see the subheader here. One of the advantages to buying your own apartment is you don't need to raise millions and millions of dollars, and the base case I use in a syndication is let's buy a $10 million deal, 100 units, and you need $3 to $4 million down payment to buy that $10 million deal. But if you cut it down to 10 units, then you only need like $300K. And so a lot of you have $300K in your own out of your own money. I mean, my very first deal was 32 units. This was back in 2001. So pricing has changed a lot. But I bought 32 units for $1 million, and I put 200,000 down because I worked in corporate America for 14 years, and I maxed out on my IRAs and 401ks. So I had saved quite a bit of money. Okay. So I'm going to talk about why small apartments. Let me just show you here what I'm going to talk about. Why small apartments. And then I'm going to pivot to, like, that's exactly how I started. I bought 32 and 30 units with my own money until I ran out of money. And then I'll share how I scaled, but I'm going to really focus in on those first two deals that I bought. And I'm going to talk about how to find them, how to fund them, and how to manage them. Okay. And it's different than buying a larger deal where we're going to hire a professional management company. And then I'm going to finish with an action plan to help you get into your first deal. So a little bit about me, as you know, because I've already said it, my very first apartment building was a 32 unit building, and I started with no experience. Since then, it's been an amazing journey. Over the last 24 years, I've done over 11,000 units, over 1.2 billion in assets under management. I paid zero in tax, actually, in 6 out of the last 8 years. 6 out of the last 8 years, zero federal income tax, because of the depreciation benefits that we get when we invest in apartments. And after I became financially free, I quit my job in 2005 and became a multimillionaire apartment investor. Only then did I start coaching people. And I also think that's important because right now, in this information and AI and digital age, there's so many coaches out there that maybe they have one deal and then they're already coaching people. And so I already became financially free, quit my job, had financial freedom, became a millionaire apartment investor. And only then I started mentoring and coaching other people. And since 2013, my students have absolutely dominated so many different markets, bought over 10 billion with a B in apartment value. And hundreds and hundreds, probably over 1,000 at this point, of my students have increased their net worth by over $1 million. So this picture here was my very first apartment building, and it was 32 units. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time digesting the numbers. It was roughly $1 million. It was $994,000. So let's just round up to $1 million. And I put 200,000 down. 20%. And I got an $800,000 loan. So right now you'd probably need to put maybe 25% down. Okay. Things have changed a little bit with the debt markets and all that. So 25% down, maybe 30% down is a good rule of thumb for you when you're looking at a small apartment building. My interest rate back then in 2002, when I bought this deal, was 6.25%. And honestly, interest rates right now for small loans are probably around that same range. Okay. I also signed personal recourse on that loan. And if you're going to get a loan for a small apartment building, which is one of the strategies, you could also do seller financing, and then you don't have recourse with the bank. But if you do sign a loan with a bank on a small loan like that, you're probably going to have personal recourse. But you know what? You got personal recourse on your credit cards. You got personal recourse on your car. You got personal recourse on the home that you live in, if you live in a home and have a mortgage. So my first two deals, this property that's in the picture, and then the next property, which was 30 units, I signed full recourse on. And here's the thing, non-recourse is great. That's one of the reasons why I like to buy 60 units and up is more likely when you buy a bigger property and you have professional management, you'll have non-recourse debt. But look, if you're going to go up buy your own unit with your own money and self-manage, yeah, the banks are probably going to want you to sign recourse. But you know what? I didn't have a problem with that. Every other loan I had in my life was recourse. So look, when you have confidence and you have a mentor and you're following a proven path and you have somebody call if you need help, like I had all the confidence in the world, even though I had no experience. And I signed the full recourse loan for $800,000. And that property, by the way, this first property put like $4,000 a month into my pocket like clockwork. And then this property put another $4,000 a month in my bank account, not in my property. This one put $4,000 a month into my bank account, and this one put $4,000 a month in my bank account. And then I sold this one. I bought it for $1 million. I sold it for 1.5. 3.5 years later, and I was the only investor. Okay, so when you're buying your own deals with your own money, you don't have an acquisition fee, a GP fee, a management fee, because all those fees are taxable income. So you don't take any fees. You just take distributions and you take profits and capital gains. Okay, so that's a big difference. Same with this property. I bought it for $600,000 and sold it for $1 million after 3 years. So these are the two properties that helped me quit my job, get started and become a millionaire apartment investor. And I did all of them with my own money. And again, I started with no experience. And if you all were on the training last week, how I started is I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I went to a real estate investing seminar and I bought the mentoring program. Okay. And some of you will start the same way. Some of you will, maybe you're here tonight or listen to the recording and you'll come to one of my training seminars. And just like thousands of other people have done over the last 14 years, some of you may decide to hire me and my team as your mentor to help you get into your first couple deals. And that's exactly how I started. So it took me 10 years to get to 1,000 units. And then it took me 10 years to get to 10,000 units or 11,000 units. And so the shift here, by the way, was I started syndicating bigger deals with more co-general partners. And from 2002 to 2012, I was buying my own deals with my own money. Number one, that was 2002 to 2005. I only bought 62 units with my own money. And then I did syndications, but I was the only GP. And then in 2012, I'm like, okay, I want to have co-GPs. And I was able to scale so much faster. But we're not talking about scaling tonight. Okay. I'm just giving you a little bit of background because, look, whether you want to syndicate a 200 unit deal or whether you want to start with a 10 unit deal with your own money, I can help you do that. Okay. So, because I've done it all. And so, look, I've been doing this 24 years. I have a lot of it figured out. I'm still learning. I don't know everything. Okay. Anybody that says they know everything, I would stay away from them because, even though I have 24 years of experience, I'm learning something every day. I go to conferences. I was just in Puerto Rico speaking at an event. And even though I'm speaking and teaching, and I was teaching about market cycles, and the topic of my presentation was when to hold, when to wait, when to strike, and how to win, looking at market cycles. And I think, Ivy, on the Sumrock team, I want to add that into this masterclass series because it was phenomenal. I mean, I talked about cap rates, how they went down and then how they went up and how they went down and how they went up and where they are now and when I was buying and when I was holding and what I got right. And I've been right most of the time, but also when I got it wrong. And I got it wrong, a few times. And what did I learn when I got it wrong? So I really want to add that into this series. If you'd like to watch that and understand market cycles, and learn from me, when to wait, when to strike, depending on what's going on in the market, just type in yes. Just type in yes right now. And I'm going to go ahead and teach that. And I know, Antonio, you were there in Puerto Rico. So anyone want to see that training? Okay, good. I'm getting a lot of yeses. Yeah. Yeah. And Karen, the question that Karen asked is this a good time to strike? It is. And the reason is that cap rates bottomed out even for C-class properties in many markets at around 4.5%. And now they're back up to over 6%. Okay. And debt is readily available and pricing is down from the 2022 peak between 30 to 40% in many markets. So it's a great time to strike right now. And the other reason is there's a lot of uncertainty. There's the Iran war going on. One day Trump's going to bomb them. Next day we're going to have peace. We don't know what's going on in the world. And so what that does is it causes people to wait. Okay. But the smart investors know that the biggest fortunes are made when everybody else is waiting. So Warren Buffett said it best. He says, be greedy when others are fearful. And then he also says, be fearful when everybody's greedy. So right now, a lot of people are fearful or they're uncertain. So they're waiting on the sidelines until they feel more safe to invest money. And so, but people that understand what they're doing and they're following a proven system and they're surrounding themselves with experts, they're taking action. It's a great time to strike. But I'll show you the data when I do that masterclass. So pivoting into the topic here, and before I do that, what I wanted to share is not only, of course, do I buy deals, but I coach a lot of people. And I have the privilege of coaching thousands and thousands of people. Literally, since I started in 2013, I started my own company. And before that, I was coaching for another organization from 2006 to 2012. So I've literally coached like thousands and thousands of people. So my mission is big. It's to impact and mentor over 1 million people to achieve financial freedom. And look, to achieve financial freedom, you need a vehicle, an investment vehicle. And the vehicle that I choose is apartments. Okay. And if you're going to invest in apartments, whether it's 5 units, 50 units, or 500 units, you want to follow a proven system, a framework, a step-by-step process. Okay. It's not enough. You got to take action, but it's not enough to take action. You got to take the right actions in the right direction. And let me give you an example. Where the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. Okay, I'll say that again. The sun rises in the east. And so if you want to see the sun rise, you can take massive action and go west and look west. And you can take the most massive action in the world. But if you're facing west, you will never see the sunrise. You have to be facing east or heading east. Okay. So you got to take massive action, but you got to take the correct actions in the correct sequence. And so you got to learn a proven system or a proven framework. Okay. So, one of the things I always teach is I only teach what I do. And I've invested in multifamily 3 ways. One of the ways is buying my own deals with my own money, which I call individual ownership, also known as buying small apartments. And then the other way is to be a passive investor in a syndication. And the other way is to be a GP or a deal sponsor in a syndication. And usually I spend most of my time in that red box talking about the benefits of being a GP. And there are many, many benefits. Like, I'm not giving up on being a GP, by the way. I'm not. I'm a co-GP right now on a deal. But tonight, my focus is buying small apartments. And one of the ways is to buy them with your own money. And it also doesn't have to be with your own money. Okay, you could still do a syndication with a small deal. The economics might not be as good, but you can still do it. So we're going to focus on that, buying small apartments. So why small apartments and what is a small apartment? So number one, I'm defining a small apartment between 5 and 50 units. Now, why don't I have 2, 3, and 4 units? Okay. And the reason is, if you look down at the very bottom of this slide, anything under 5 units is valued by CMA. CMA stands for Comparative Market Analysis. So what that means is, let's get the languaging correct. A 2-unit building is theoretically a multi-family building. There's 2 units. A 3-unit building, it's multi-unit. A 3-unit building can have 3 families. Okay, well, the last time I checked, any more than 1 family is multi-family. Okay, but the reason we consider multi-family 5 units and above is anything 5 units and above is valued by net operating income divided by cap rate. Okay, I'll say that again. Anything 5 units and above is valued by NOI divided by cap rate. Anything 4 units and below is valued by comparative market analysis, or CMA. So what a CMA is you're going to run the sales comps. Okay, so you're going to run, if you have a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, you need to find comparable sales. Okay, and this is how appraisers and lenders will value them. So a lender is going to loan you a certain LTV, an appraiser is going to appraise it worth a certain amount of money, and they're going to run the comps, and they're going to find sales comps. Okay. In multifamily, they do that as well. They run sales comps, but the main way they value is by the net operating income, and then they divide it by a cap rate. So right now, tonight, we're talking about 5 to 50 units. Now, one of some of the advantages of buying small apartments, okay, and I always talk about the advantages of buying 60 units and up, but I want to talk about now the advantages of small apartments, is more often than not, they're owned locally. Okay, now sometimes we have out-of-state owners that own these small apartments, and when we do, there's even more operational efficiencies by and large than when they're owned locally. But the advantage of owning them locally is no matter where you live, you can always find the owners. Okay, and you can find them, and I'm going to talk about how you find them. But they're often locally owned, and most of them are mom and pop. Now, what mom and pop means is like exactly what it sounds like. It's a lot of them are a husband-wife couple, that, not to stereotype, but, that the husband's there doing the maintenance after his job on the weekends and evenings, or the family's kids are taking care of the property, or the wife is leasing units, or, again, it could be the husband, it could be the wife doing the maintenance, but like these are, a lot of them are family owned and operated businesses. And so what that means is that there's a lot of inefficiencies, because it even could be like handed down, like the parents bought the property and now the sons or daughters are running it, and they don't really want to run it. It was the parents' dream to buy this piece of property, or somebody got it in an inheritance. Somebody died and now the kids have the property and they don't really want it. Okay. Or the husband-wife team, or they love it, but they're doing everything themselves, and they're not dumb, but they don't have like systems in place, and they're doing things, themselves, and they're not hiring people that are better trained than they are, like professional leasing agents, professional maintenance people. And why not? Well, that's too expensive. I'll do everything myself. So if you think about ESBI, the cash flow quadrant, there's employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. Self-employed is the S. S also stands for do it yourself. Okay. So if they would go out and hire leasing agents, they would go out and hire professional management, they might have better systems and better efficiencies, but they would also have higher costs. And so a lot of these mom and pops, they will do all the work themselves. They don't pay themselves any salaries. This is why when you're buying a mom and pop property, rarely do you see in the expenses property management or payroll, because they're doing everything themselves and they're not paying themselves a salary. So you got to keep that in mind, because if you buy that small property, are you going to do it yourself, or are you going to hire a maintenance person, a leasing agent, or a property management company? And I'm going to talk to you about how I did it, by the way. But the bottom line is, one of the advantages of buying these small apartments is, by and large, there's so many operational efficiencies that you don't actually find as much in these bigger deals that are professionally managed. Okay. Now there's a lot of advantages of buying bigger deals that are professionally managed too. And one of them is professional management, economies of scale, better financing, non-recourse financing. But when we pivot over to buy these small properties, the advantages here are inefficiencies in operations, inefficiencies in income, and inefficiencies in expenses. And they're better than single family homes because single family homes have more risk. I mean, if you have, I'm going to use an example of a 10-unit apartment building. And if two people move out, you still have 80% occupancy. You can still cash flow at 80% occupancy. If you have a single family home and one person moves out, you go from 100 to 0% occupancy. Okay. And even a 10-unit apartment building is valued by NOI and not CMA. So, of course, the business model for anything 5 units is up is we want to raise the NOI. And the way we raise the NOI is by focusing on how do we raise the income, which is typically by raising the rent or raising the occupancy. And then how do we optimize these expenses? And so if we could raise the income, optimize the expenses, we're going to raise the NOI and raise the value. Okay. So what does a small deal look like? So I'm going to take a 10-unit deal. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to make an assumption from the beginning. Okay. I'm going to assume that we could buy a 10-unit deal for below market value. Okay. And this is the other advantage. If you're going to buy a 100-unit deal, most of these owners that own 100 units, they're going to go to a broker. Okay. Even if it's a distressed deal, they're going to go to the broker. The broker is going to advise them on the price. They're going to advise them on the NOI, the cap rate, the pro forma value, and they're going to try to get as high as a price that they can get. If you go to an owner of a 10-unit deal, they're probably going to say, well, we don't want to spend the money to hire a broker. They're going to charge us 3%, to sell our deal. We'll do it ourselves. And they think they're saving money, but actually they're probably going to leave a lot of money on the table. And it's because they're mom and pops and they don't know what they don't know. And so their mistake is your advantage. Again, this is another operational efficiency that happens with mom and pop owners. So this property might actually be worth $1 million, if they had good bookkeeping, good record keeping, good systems in place. But because they don't have good record keeping and good bookkeeping and good systems in place, and they're not using an investment sales advisor, also known as a broker, they may sell it to you for $750 and they're not paying a 3% commission, but they may be leaving, a couple $100K on the table and they don't even know what they don't know. Okay. So I'm going to make a presupposition here that because we're dealing with less sophisticated sellers and owners, that we could get better pricing. So we're going to buy this 10-unit deal for $750,000. So what that might look like with 25% down would be a $200,000 down payment, a $550,000 loan, and then you're going to still need some money for renovation and closing costs. So you're still going to need $300,000 in cash. Okay, so this is just an example. Now, obviously, you might be able to get a deal for less than $750, or maybe you need to pay more than $750. But this is just an example. And so when we look at the projections, the income, let's say the units are renting at $1,000 a month. And so 10 units times $1,000 a month, that's $10,000 a month times 12 months. So your annual income on this baby would be $120,000 a year. And your expenses should be around 40%. Now, again, when I look at buying 60 units and up, I use a 50% expense ratio because all the line items are accounted for, from third-party management, payroll, professionals, contract services, where the owner is not, the owner's activity is not showing up anywhere in the P&L when we buy 60 units and up. Okay. When you buy under 50 units, you're not going to have that situation. There's going to be some role of the owner. Okay. And so in other words, like some of the activities the ownership or the owner does or the ownership group does may not show up in those expenses. And so if I were teaching you how to underwrite a 60 unit in that property, which I've done many, many times, and some of you have seen it, I use a 50% expense ratio. But here it's going to be lower than 50%. So I'm using about a 40% expense ratio, which is 50,000 a year. And so the NOI would be 70,000. And then if we look at a debt payment on a $550,000 loan at say 6.25%, fully amortized, no interest only, amortized over 25 years, we're going to have an annual debt payment of around $40,000. And that's going to give you a $30,000 a year cash flow on a $300,000 down payment, which is roughly a 10% cash on cash return. And your year one depreciation loss because of bonus accelerated depreciation on a $300,000 down payment should be around 250 grand. Okay, so you're going to get a huge year one loss that can possibly be used if you, or if you're married, if you or your spouse can qualify as a qualified real estate professional, then you can have that depreciation loss possibly offset your earned income. Okay, so good cash flow, great tax advantages. Now, what does the upside look, say 3 to 5 years in the future? Well, let's say even at 3 to 5 years in the future, we could raise rents by $200 a month. I think that sounds reasonable based on my 24 years of experience. And so now the income goes from $120,000 a year to $144,000 a year. The expenses go from $50,000 to $60,000, which is still a 40% expense ratio. And so we have a new NOI of $84,000, up from $70,000. The debt payment is the same. And so we have more cash flow, $44,000 a year. Now, if we assign a 7% cap rate to this property with an NOI of $84,000 and a 7 cap, it's valued at $1.2 million. So unlike the ownership group that you bought it from that was unsophisticated and doesn't have good record keeping and bookkeeping and financial statements, and they're not using a broker because they want to save 3%, you have good systems. Okay. You have financials, and you're going to go to a broker, and a broker is going to properly value this property. And so you're going to be able to sell it based on a cap rate of say 7%, which is a value of $1.2 million. Okay. So you've paid $750 and you sell it for $1.2 million. So you can see you more than double your $300,000 down payment. And I know you might be saying, Brad, this sounds good, too good to be true. And what about this? And what about that? But look, on the big picture, this is actually close enough. And this is exactly what I did on my 32 unit building. Okay. I bought it for $1 million and I sold it for $1.5 million in 3.5 years. And then my 32 unit, I bought it for $600 and I sold it for $1 million again in 3.5 years. So I've done it. And I know it's possible. And I started with no previous real estate investing experience. Okay. So that's what a small deal could look like. Now, how do you find them? Well, unlike the big deals, you're going to find a lot of small deals on MLS, the multiple listing service. So if you can get access to a realtor that can help you find these deals on MLS, you'll be able to find, especially like the 5, 10, and 15 unit deals. They're all over the place on MLS, unlike the bigger deals. You could also work with brokers. You could go direct to owners. And how do you find owners? Okay, there's tons of online services. There's free ones like LoopNet. There's paid ones like CoStar that owns LoopNet. There's Crexi. Okay, there's broker websites. Okay, there's also by driving neighborhoods, like anywhere in the country, these small mom and pop buildings, most of them are owned locally, and they're never going to have a for sale sign. But a lot of these owners are old, they're tired, they want out, they don't have economies of scale, or they're being nickel and dime by their management companies and they don't know what they're doing. and they would love to just get out of their deals. And some of them may be even willing to finance their deals. So you don't even have to go to the bank. Okay. And that's another advantage of doing these small apartments, is that the bigger deals, the bigger deals, the 5, 10, $20 million deals, very, very rarely are you going to find like seller financing. But on these smaller deals, these $1 million deals, these $700,000 deals where you put some money down and you need a $500,000 or $600,000 loan, ask the seller to carry it. Ask the seller to carry the note, at a better interest rate than you could get from a bank. So you could do that too. And a lot of people were doing that. Okay. So that's how to find them. And then how do you fund them? I already talked about some of this stuff. So number one is you could buy it yourself with your own money if you have the money. Number two, instead of a syndication where you have one GP and passive investors, you could find joint venture partners. And the difference is, in a joint venture, everybody has an active role. Everybody has an active role. So imagine, like in a syndication, we have co-GPs and we still have passive investors. Imagine we just have, 3 to 5 co-GPs, but no passive investors. Well, if there's no passive investors and everybody has a substantive duty, that is a joint venture. So if you need 300,000, you can find 3 people with 100K and you all chip in and you all have an active role in the deal. That's an example of a joint venture. Okay. Or you could do a small syndication. You could have one GP and raise 300,000 from a few people. There the economics get tighter, because if you're a GP and you're doing all the work, you're going to want to have a fee structure, an acquisition fee, a management fee, maybe take 20 or 30% of the deal. And this is where, if you're truly wanting to syndicate, it makes more sense to go bigger. Okay, so that's why when we talk about buying small apartments, the better way to go is your own money, joint venture partners, seller financing. Okay, and then if you're putting a down payment down, then you could do seller financing the rest of the deal, or a bank. And again, bank loans are typically full recourse loans, just like any other loan that you've had in your life. Okay, but that's how you finance and fund these deals. Now, how do you manage them? Okay, how you manage the deals, this is where it gets tricky, but this is also where the opportunity is. Again, the opportunity in buying small apartments is buying them from unsophisticated owners that don't know how to properly value their properties, and they don't use brokers. So that's going to be a great opportunity for you to get a good deal. Okay, then once you buy it, you got to decide, am I going to self-manage or hire professional management? Okay. If you self-manage, then you're still going to want to have some helpers. Okay. Like when I bought my 32 unit, I actually self-managed. That doesn't mean I quit my 6-figure job to sit in the 32 unit building. No, I self-managed means I was the property management company. Okay. And on my 32 unit, I had an on-site manager. It was a lady that lived in one of the units with her husband and 5 children, and she didn't work outside of the home. She was a homemaker. Her children went to school every day. There was a school right next door to the property. And so her husband, Enrique, was a contractor. He did construction. Her 5 kids went to school, and Rosa stayed at home. And I made Rosa, who was there every day, I made her my manager, and I paid her free rent. And that's how I managed 32 units. Okay. And then for maintenance, I had Martine. And Martine worked full time at a 120 unit apartment building. And he worked there every day from 9 to 5. But guess what he did on evenings and weekends? He worked for Mr. Brad at the 32 unit building. And so Martine, again, he worked evenings and weekends as needed. And so Rosa, who lived at the property, the tenants would come to her when they had a maintenance issue. And then when Martine would get there after 5, and he would fix them. Okay. Or he would fix them on the weekends. And so that's how I managed it. I had an on-site manager that I paid free rent, and then I had a part-time maintenance guy that showed up evenings and weekends, and that was on 32 units. So that's how I did it. Now, and so you could do that too, but just so you know, every property needs a manager and a maintenance person. Every property, even 5 units, 10 units. Okay. Somebody's got to, and what does a manager do? Okay. The manager signs leases. The manager maintains the keys. The manager takes maintenance requests. The manager knocks on doors and collects rent. The manager goes and does the evictions to the court. Like, I didn't do any of this, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I had a full-time job when I bought 32 units. Like, I didn't go to court and do evictions. Okay. I didn't meet tenants to lease units. I didn't have the keys. Okay. What I did serving as the property management company is I learned how to do QuickBooks. So I paid all the bills, maintained all the bank accounts, had access. I was the only, my Rosa and Martine didn't have a company credit card. They didn't have access to the bank accounts. Okay. I paid all the bills. I did all the bookkeeping. And then we had a system in Texas. It was called Blue Moon Software. And Blue Moon Software did all the leases automatically online. And we subscribed to a tenant screening where you could screen tenants for credit, criminal, income, employment, and tenant performance, also known as eviction history. And so you need to have system for that. Okay, no matter what you do, okay, whether you self-manage, now if you hire a professional management company, they're probably going to take 6 to 10% of all your collections, and then they should have systems for that. Okay, your management company needs to have a system for filling out leases, for doing make-readies, like what happens when people move out, and do they have a vendor list for carpet, paint, resurfacing, anything that needs to be done to get a unit ready, a system for maintenance and tracking maintenance and work orders, a system for rent and collections, a system for doing evictions, and for screening tenants and for bookkeeping. So if you're hiring a management company, they need to be able to do all that. Okay. The challenge with hiring these management companies is they're taking 6 to 10% of your collections, and they're not staffing the property. Like, if you have a 10 unit, they are not going to have somebody there. Okay. And there's a challenge with that. So, like, you buy 10 units, you hire a management company, how do you lease the unit? So let's say a tenant goes by and they want to lease a unit. They're probably going to put a sign out, call this number, or go to the office down the street, 17 blocks away. And so what I like to do is I like to have somebody there on the property, even with 10 units. There needs to be a sign. There needs to be some direction that says, hey, go to unit 8. The manager lives in unit 8. And then, you have the what I did, I had Rosa living in unit 16. And so when people would go to my property, we had a sign that said leasing office, unit 16. It was the ladies and it was the family's apartment. There was no separate office. They signed the leases in Rosa's living room. Okay, on 32 units, and certainly not on 10 units, you're not going to have a dedicated office. That you have 10 units. If you have a dedicated office, that's 10% of your income. So every unit is going to be a rentable unit. You're not going to have any down units, no units for storage, no model units, no office units. Every unit is a rentable unit. And by the way, that's true up until over 100 units. Every unit should be a rentable unit. Okay. And then you have to decide, am I going to have an on-site manager or am I going to have a professional property manager? And the pros and the cons is if you hire a professional management company that's going to take 6 to 10% of all your collections, they should have systems for all these things on the slide. Okay. The disadvantage is they still may not do as good as if you self-manage. But if you self-manage now, like I ran the background checks, I did the bookkeeping, Martine did the maintenance, and Rosa did the collections, the evictions, and the leasing, and Martine did the mate readies. But you need to have all these boxes checked. Okay. So management is the biggest challenge buying small apartments. But I also want to tell you this, it's the biggest opportunity. Okay. It's the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity. So what's the action plan? Okay. The action plan is with any action plan is you got to do the right actions in the right order, the right sequence. And how do you do that? Is you get educated and you learn a proven system. Okay. And so I teach a proven system. This is one of the biggest questions I get is, Brad, can you help me do this? Well, look, I've helped people syndicate 100-unit plus apartment buildings as their first deal. But I've also helped many of my students buy small apartments. And I'm also uniquely qualified to do that because that's exactly how I started. Okay. So what I teach is the business model, which I call understanding the deal. Then I teach the finding the deals, the funding the deals with the debt and the equity, closing, managing, and exiting the deal. And look, because I started this way, like I could easily teach you how to buy under 50 units. Okay. And so the next step for many of you is going to be come to one of my 2-day training events. So the next one coming up is I know I said a 2-day event in June 26th through 28th, looks like 3 days on the calendar, but it's really a 2-day event. So we start Friday evening, we go all day Saturday, and then we finish Sunday by 5:00. And so in 2 days, I'm going to teach you pretty much everything you need to know about apartment investing from beginning to end. So finding the deals, raising the capital, funding the deals, structuring the deals, closing the deals, managing the deals. And here's the interesting thing. The event's complimentary. Okay. And why am I doing this? Is because I'm limiting the number of people. Okay. And so even though it's a complimentary event, we take steps to make sure that we have qualified people in the room. And so like the way we're advertising and promoting all of everything that we're doing, including this event, is you deserve to be in that room. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't have gotten the invitation to be on this Zoom meeting. Okay. So it's a complimentary ticket. And so when you scan this QR code, you're going to see a couple things. You're going to see a general admission option, which is free, and you get full access to the event. The full Friday evening, it says 2-day event access, but it's Friday evening to Sunday afternoon, where I'm going to teach you my 4-step framework. We're going to walk through some real actual deals, and everybody that comes, even for free, one of the days we're going to get on a bus and we're going to look at a couple deals in Dallas. Okay. So the event is in Dallas, Texas. Now, if you want an enhanced experience, when you go to scan that QR code, you'll have a platinum ticket experience. And the platinum ticket includes everything in general admission, and you get better seating. The first couple rows of the training seminar are going to be reserved for the platinum members. Hey, whenever I go to an event, I'm always in the first few rows, always in the first few rows. You also have a lunch with me on Saturday. You do a one-on-one personalized call after the event to walk you through your next steps. And then one of the best things that we do is we do an advanced underwriting session on Sunday morning for the platinums. Okay. So because of everything that we're doing there and the additional costs, we charge for the platinum VIP experience. Okay. And so again, all you have to do is scan that QR code. So look, I want to see in the chat who's coming to this event. Okay. If you're going to come to the Dallas Rat Race to Retirement event, I want to see that you put it in the chat. So who's coming? Okay. Pavan, that's amazing. It's great to see you coming there. Mike Patterson, amazing. Okay, good. Lots of you are starting to type in that you're coming to the event. So I love it. Now, this event is exactly how I got started. Okay. How I started is I had no previous real estate investing experience whatsoever. And I want to walk you through exactly how I started. Okay. It's super simple, but some people make it so complicated. Is I invested a week of my life, a weekend of my life, and it was $500. So unlike that event back in 2001 that was $500, I'm inviting you to come for free. Okay. I invested $500 to spend the Saturday and Sunday learning how to invest in real estate. And then at the end of the event, I bought the coaching program. And then 8 months later, I bought 32 units. And 8 months after that, I bought another 30 units. And then I quit my job. So you tell me, was it a good investment to go and spend a weekend of my life learning how to invest in real estate? You betcha it was the best investment I ever made financially. And I promise you this, if you come to my weekend event, it'll be the best investment you ever made financially. And here's the thing. I know you're saying, well, Brad, it's free. But you know what? Here's what I'm going to tell you. It's not free. Your time isn't free. And if you travel from outside of Dallas, you might have to get on an airplane, and that's not free, and neither is the hotel. So I value your time. And I'm going to treat this event as if it were a $1,000 ticket, okay? Because you deserve it. This is not like a bait and switch sales pitch. Like, I'm going to teach you as much as I can in Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And you're going to walk away and you're going to know more than 99% of America about how to invest in apartment buildings. Okay. So that's the event. Now, the only negative about this event is it's June 26th and today is May 6th. And so look, here's what I want to tell you. If you want to start now, like, look, if I told you I wanted to lose weight and get in shape, but I'm going to start June 26th, some of you would be like, Brad, you're freaking crazy. Like, why don't you start now or start tomorrow? Like, don't wait until June 26th. So for those of you that don't want to wait until June 26th, I have an amazing opportunity for you. And again, this is only for those of you that want to get a head start on winning right now and winning in apartments. And what it is I created a system called Acquisitions to Asset Management. And it covers everything in between those two spectrums, from acquiring the deal to managing the deal and everything in between. Okay. And so what A to A includes is, if you look at this sheet, it includes 2 tickets to Rat Race, but it's not just 2 free tickets, it's 2 platinum tickets. Okay. And we're selling the platinum tickets for $197 each. So if you invest in the A to A system, you get not 1, but 2 platinum tickets. That means you get to bring a friend or your spouse or, an adult child that maybe you want to work with. Okay, so 2 platinum tickets, and you get 4 training modules where you have lifetime access, lifetime for the rest of your life. You'll have 4 training modules on understanding the deal, finding the deal, funding the deal, and closing the deal. Lifetime access to these 4 online modules that I've personally created myself. And then most valuable is you get the Sumrock proprietary property analyzer that has been only made available to the people in my $30,000 mastermind community. And it's yours in the A to A system. And if you add up everything that's in the system, it's like an $8,000 system, and I'm offering it for $500. So this is a no-brainer. This should be a no-brainer for everybody that's still here. Like, I'm looking at how many people were online, and some people already checked out, like after I talked about coming the Rat Race for free. So they probably grabbed the free event and then they're done. But there's still many of you on. And if you're still on, that means you're still interested. It means that, like, you're choosing to be here with me rather than somewhere else. So look, man, for $500, this is a no-brainer. Okay. 4 training modules where I've personally created the content, where you have lifetime access on understanding the deal, finding the deal, funding the deal, closing the deal. You can have those modules done, and you can master the use of my property analyzer before June 28th. And then on June 28th or June 26th, 27th, and 28th, you and a friend come and have the platinum experience. You get to sit in the front rows, you get to have lunch with me, and we have a bonus training on underwriting. Okay, so look, take your pick. Okay, you have a free option. You come to Rat Race event, or you have the platinum option at Rat Race for $200, or for $500, you could get my whole system. Okay, so the choice is yours, but please make one of those 3 choices. If all you do is tune in tonight and say, hey, Brad, thank you, this was a great event, and you didn't take advantage of one of these 3 options, I can't help you anymore. Like I can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I can't make you guys drink. Okay. I led you to the water because you showed up tonight or you're watching the replay, but I can't force you to drink the water. So what I mean is I can't help you if you don't take advantage of one of my free offers. And I'm on one of my 3 offers, and one of them is free. So I have the free event, the platinum ticket event, or the A to A system. Please take one of these options. Okay. I promise you it's going to be worth your time and worth your money. And if it's not, I'll refund you the money. 100%, no questions asked. Okay. So look, I'm going to finish up here. It's at the top of the hour. I promised you, I committed to you, I'd be done at the top of the hour. I want to honor that commitment. And I want to thank you for spending your evening with me, wherever you're at in the world or in the USA. I have a secret. I'm not even in the USA. I'm on vacation right now. I'm outside of the USA, but I didn't want to tell you that in the beginning, but I'm going to tell you that now. But I also want to say there's nothing else I'd rather be doing right now, even though I'm in a beautiful place somewhere far away from the USA. I'm in a beautiful place, having a great time, but there's nothing I'd rather be doing, and there's no one I'd rather be with for this past hour than you. So I hope to see you all in Dallas at an absolute minimum. Look, I'm offering a 2.5-day training event Friday evening, June 26th, all day Saturday, June 27th, Sunday, June 28th until 4 p.m. And I'm offering you to come for free. And why am I doing that? Because the truth is we need more people investing in apartments. Apartments went through a downturn, and there's so many people on the sidelines. There's so many deals out there, and we need people buying apartments. We need people buying small apartments. We need people buying big apartments. We need people investing passively in apartments. We need more people buying apartments. Okay. And that people could be you. And so rather than charging hundreds of dollars, which I used to charge for my events, I'm doing it for free because we need people to buy apartments and invest in apartment buildings. Okay, there's a window of opportunity here that I haven't seen in a decade. It's a complete buyer's market because of all the uncertainty going on in the world. So the location of the event is Dallas, Texas, and only for those people that are registering for the event, you'll get the exact location, the conference center, the hotel, wherever it may be in Dallas, Texas. Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you guys. See you next weekend. I'm going to do another one of these, and I'll hopefully see all of you in Dallas, Texas. Thank you for your time and your attention tonight. Good night.